What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another video. Before I dig into the video and some of the topics up for discussion here, I wanted to give a couple of shout outs. First to Ray Pulley-Pulford and Adam Berry. They recently increased their monthly Patreon contribution. Thank you guys so much for doing that. And I also got a new Patreon named Darth Muck. That's Brian Neidhart. And Brian, thank you so much for becoming a Patreon supporter. I really appreciate it. And as I've already told you, your name may not appear in the graphic with the Patreon thanks at the beginning of a bunch of videos I've already made and uploaded to YouTube. So just be patient, because every new video, including this one that we're going to go over here in a second, will have your name. So thank you again to all my Patreon supporters. Okay, so here is the topic for discussion. And I've got some backup kind of information, some news that's popped up, some rumors. Is the Star Wars brand dying? A slow death? And I think the answer for us, the typical subscriber of my channel, the hardcore collector of Star Wars items, the answer is no. All right. You know, I think we'd all agree that no matter what happens with the Star Wars brand moving forward in terms of content or toys, it's not really going to affect our consumption of the existing Star Wars content or collecting whatever you collect, Star Wars comics, action figures, vintage, TVC, whatever it is. I think that we can all agree that from our perspective, the hardcore collector, the hardcore Star Wars fan, the answer is no. The brand is not dying in our minds. But what about the people that make the decisions, the decision makers at Disney and at Hasbro that green light what we consume, both action figures, comics, whatever it is, as well as Disney Plus content or movies? And I think the argument can be made that there are some signs that the decision makers view the Star Wars brand as in a rut right now and potentially dying a slow death. So I want to start off first with this news announcement that just came out yesterday, February 8th, as of the making of this video. Disney came out with their kind of guidance and talked about cutting jobs. They're slashing $5.5 billion in costs as it begins a restructuring. And they just got a new CEO. Disney did, Bob Iger. He obviously was the CEO. He left. Disney had been doing really poorly, so he came back. And so Disney's going to slash 7,000 jobs from its workforce and plans to cut $5.5 billion in costs, including, most importantly for us, $3 billion in new content creation costs. So we're going to get back to that topic in a little while. They're also reorganizing into three main divisions: entertainment, which obviously the Star Wars brand falls underneath, the ESPN brand, and then parks and experiences. So they're going to reorganize, they're going to slash jobs and slash costs. But most importantly, they're talking about cutting $3 billion in content costs. So to me, that's a sign that they view Disney Plus right now. It's struggling to add new subscribers because of all the new competition that's out there in terms of streaming services. The new content is costing a lot of money, and so $3 billion of that from content is going to be cut down in terms of their costs, and that excludes sports. So that $3 billion does not include licensing for ESPN properties, the licensing costs that they pay the sports leagues, things like that. So that $3 billion is separate from that. And, there was one other important point I wanted to take a look at here. And this is Bob Iger speaking in the call with investors on Wednesday. He says, we will take a very hard look at the cost of everything we make across television and film. And so how does that affect what they do moving forward with new Disney Plus content for Star Wars specifically? And obviously, we've already got a lot of content that's in post-production or it's already done. The Mandalorian Season 3, Ahsoka. Those are programs that have already been filmed. Those costs have already been had, so to speak, for Disney. But moving forward, if they have kind of a plan in place to reduce costs, I think that there's a risk that the amount and the quality of new Disney Plus Star Wars content could be severely affected. We may not see the kind of big production type of stuff that we've seen in the past, including Season 3 of The Mandalorian. If you look at some of the trailers for Season 3, it's epic. I mean, they have big battles. There's big battles between the Mandalorians, and there's lots of space battles with ships and things like that. Those are expensive to produce, lots of special effects costs. And here's one thing that I'm going to touch on in a little while here, because I question whether this is really true right now. On Wednesday, Iger again echoed those comments about returning control to the creative minds at the company. So they're trying to get away from these people that do not know Star Wars, or maybe do not have the same passion for Star Wars. They want to return control of new Star Wars content to the creative minds that love Star Wars and know Star Wars. So my question is whether that's true or not, because at the end of the video, we're going to come out with a rumor in terms of what the plan is moving forward with Star Wars content. And it does not align with these comments at all. If you look at this, just remember this comment when we come back to it at the end of the video: returning control to the creative minds at the company. And I really question whether that's true or not. So, the Disney's announcements, it was met with, positivity on the financial markets. They're cutting costs. So of course the stock has gone up as a result of that. People cheered that. Disney's trying to make Disney Plus profitable moving forward. And they're going to do that by cutting workforce and by cutting costs. So that's the Disney side of things. And again, we'll return to that in a second with what the rumors are in terms of what they plan to do in terms of new Star Wars content moving forward. But before I talk about that, I wanted to talk about Hasbro. Hasbro, also on January 26th, they came out and announced that they're cutting 15% of their workforce, and they warned that their Q4 results, which are going to be announced on February 16th, were hurt by a challenging holiday consumer environment. Now, to me, blaming it on the holidays is one thing. I question whether that's really true or not. Obviously, Hasbro has its issues, not only within Star Wars, but across some of the other brands that they manage. They obviously have Magic the Gathering, which they kind of have fallen back on in terms of monetization of that brand. And a lot of Magic the Gathering fans are, they're up in arms because it seems like they're just pushing out too much new stuff, new license, new properties as part of Magic the Gathering. And those fans are kind of in an uproar, saying Hasbro is basically commercializing Magic the Gathering as much as they can, and it's ticked off their fan base. And I think that the same thing could be said with Star Wars, that a lot of Hasbro's repaints and issues as it results with new announcements, there's a lot of rehashing going on with Clone Troopers, with repaints of Boba Fett, with Carbonized. I mean, there's so many things that we obviously know and love about the Star Wars brand. But there's also stuff that we don't like that is covered by much better channels like Boss Bounty and Usual Mike and Only One Kenobi, John Miko. Those guys cover kind of latest and greatest reveals with Hasbro. That's what they do. I don't really do that. But I want to talk more broadly about, Hasbro's struggles here, and could it affect the Star Wars toys moving forward? They just came out with some reveals the last week or two, and they're not doing pre-orders anymore. And it's a question as to whether they just plan on making smaller production runs and not having unsold inventory. That's something that you hear from a lot of retailers like Target, Walmart, Amazon even, that they have a lot of unsold inventory. I'm sure part of that is Star Wars. We all see peg warmers like some of the vintage collection figures that are not loved, and they're warming the pegs at retail. And my question to you guys is, given this news that they're cutting their workforce, that they're obviously struggling in terms of sales, do you think that this is a sign that they're going to go to lower production runs for some of the vintage collection or Black Series figures moving forward into this year, and that's why they're not doing pre-orders? Because they know that pre-orders are going to outstrip demand. They're going to be going smaller, leaner production runs, and then just throwing them out to market. So it's a curious move by them. I'm not saying I disagree with it. Obviously the pre-order process for a lot of Star Wars items from Hasbro is been a mess the last couple of years. And so you can't have it both ways. You can't criticize the pre-order process and then Hasbro moving over to a no pre-order process and then complain about that as well. So, but I do question if because they are not doing a pre-order process, Is it because they know internally that the production runs are going to be substantially smaller than what we're used to, and there's going to be a shortage? It's just a question I have for you. And so, it's a related topic, and it's just something that I'd love to hear your thoughts on. Now, here's the rumor that I hinted at earlier in the video. There's a rumor that Walt Disney executives see the Star Wars brand as damaged, and allegedly have a new plan for new content involving Rey and Baby Yoda. So, again, let's first cover the YouTube video. This YouTube video, which I will put a link in the video description to this video, so everyone can go check out this video. But it's by WDW Pro. And again, go watch the video. This is the video here. And apparently, some of the people at Lucasfilm, for the future of Star Wars, that they're at a decision point in the last few months concerning Star Wars, because they see the brand as damaged even internally at Disney. There's declining viewership at Disney Plus, apparently. There's declining interest in the parks, and part of that could be because they've raised prices so much. But Star Wars cannot fail for Disney, and they're at a decision point as to what they want to do moving forward. And apparently, Disney has plans. This is a rumor again, but this WDW Pro hinted that they're talking about bringing back Rey for future content. And there's also, they did like a focus group that said that R2-D2 was far and away more popular than BB-8. It did not matter if people had seen the droids before. It didn't matter if they'd never heard of Star Wars whatsoever. So based on that focus group, they're now talking about bringing Rey back with R2-D2 instead of BB-8, and then adding in Chewbacca also. And then having those three team up with Grogu, and somehow either by retconning the past sequel trilogy or doing something else to bring them all together into new content. And so this goes back to what Bob Iger talked about in his earnings call, that they want to bring back the decision-making to the creative types. Does this sound like that to you? Does it sound like to you that Disney wants to turn it back to the creative types for Star Wars by having some sort of new content with Rey, R2-D2, Chewbacca, and Grogu? To me, that doesn't sound like it at all. And to me, this seems like it takes no imagination, and that it is geared towards casual fans. And maybe that's why. Maybe that's why they're bringing those big names back to potentially do that. Daisy Ridley was apparently at Lucasfilm here recently, apparently not related to any kind of new content, but she told a source that, there's no plans to revisit her character, but and that she liked the way her story ended, but you never say never type thing. So she's opening the door to returning as Rey, but it doesn't seem like that's returning, the Star Wars brand to the creative types. And it makes you question, let's just say hypothetically that Andor had not been made yet, okay? Andor was, to me, a return to the creative types. It was a fantastic show, probably the best content for Star Wars since Disney has taken over the brand, with the possible exception of Rogue One, the movie. And it was just a fantastic, gritty series, and it was almost like not Star Wars, right? It was just an incredible piece of a miniseries that dove into the internal workings and the gears that grind for the Imperial Army, the Galactic Empire. And I just thought it was an incredibly well done, incredibly acted. The writing was just unbelievable. Some of my favorite scenes within Andor were not action related at all. They was just some of those little small snippets of conversation between certain characters that really dove into character depth, and it was just something that I never expected Disney to ever produce. And so my question to you is, given all of what's going on right now at Disney, all the restructurings, all the layoffs, and given what this is apparently they're talking about doing by bringing Rey and R2-D2 back to team up with Grogu, does it sound like to you that Andor would be made right now, given what we know here in these kind of rumor mill type stuff? And my argument would be no. There would be no chance in heck that Andor would get made in the current environment. So are we going to see more risk-taking like the Andor series moving forward, or are we going to play it safe and have Rey come back for some awful adventure with Grogu and R2-D2 and Chewbacca? So, but, you know, to me, again, I think the question that I'm proposing to this video is not, is the Star Wars brand dying from our perspective, the hardcore fan, but from the decision makers' perspectives at Disney and Hasbro as they struggle to make ends meet and have profitability for the Disney Plus streaming series with the Star Wars brand in general, and over at Hasbro with their toys. So just food for thought, and I want to thank you for watching, and I'll be back soon.